I mean, being honest with you, that just sounds to me like a left-wing argument when they say, "Why don't these countries get ahead? Colonialism, you're a colonizer." It's like, "Okay, but when we got there, they had no development. When we got to Africa, they had no technological development,
So you
no
think
recorded
that even
history."
if we weren't at war, and sure, you could say that you think that's a leftist argument. I would only push back on that because I've learned so much about just like recent history that I didn't know. But you think that the Middle East, like if we had done nothing in terms of the Middle East, that they would just be savages and just be like, America didn't do anything to set, it doesn't set anything backwards. You're just like bombing a place.
Yeah, kind of. I think that we did set them back because when they don't have political order, it prevents development and investment and things like that. But, again, when you look at the antecedents of all these, the history didn't start, like you said, with World War II in the 20th century. There's a reason that European civilization created this enormous gap between them and everybody else. And I don't think it was that it was white supremacy or it was unfair or something like that. I think it's because Europeans are smarter. I think that on average,
So
Europeans
to
are
use your
smarter.
There's a truth to it, and there's a lot of false narrative about it as well. And I think we think about Europe, we think about Christianity, because at the end of the day, it's God. God is the center of all of that. And before God, there was a lot happening that was pretty similar to Africa. So today, thank you to Nick Fuentes and the interview with Candace. We're gonna be able to dive deep into a history of Christianity in Europe through Africa and how it kind of developed into those areas. So I think there's an important part about being able to use the confidence that God gave us and not being narcissistic about it, but being able to use it for what God wants for us. The narrative, or at least the story that I'm going to develop here for the next couple of months, is really going to be centered around that, around the confidence, around the purpose, but deep into the history. I love history. Little confession here. If you're Black, African like me, and you're looking for a way to find your own purpose, and you are definitely confused about your own faith. Is it about the white people that we are Christian? Is it because of the slavery? Is it a white man religion that we all know that we've been told so much, especially recently? There's going to be a lot of, let's say, developing things or uncovering truth about it. And it's really going to be up to you. And me being a coach, I love going deeper into the history, going deeper into the psychological part beyond the faith. And there's a link with just being logical about it and not just feeling your emotion. A lot more deep, a lot more solid than just my own opinion, because who cares? This is the first chapter, the first episode. Interesting, interesting. So let's go. Before cathedrals, before monasteries, before the cross, there was chaos. Fear ruled. God demanded. Blood flowed. But the soul of Europe longed for more. What was Europe before Christianity? Well, there was a lot of famine, a lot of limited food, or at least limited access to the food. They had poor agricultural techniques, which led to not having crop rotations, limited storage, so limited access to the food. And on top of that, there was a harsh climate, fluctuating all the time, natural disasters too. Not only that, you got tribal warfare, because you got a lot of nations, so a lot of tribes, at least, being in the same territories. And when they don't know each other, they would clash, they would fight. So that would lead to destroying a lot of fields, and that would lead to displacing the population as well. So there was a lot of people moving around, a lot of people meeting each other, but it was not that love. There was not that community of just knowing somebody and knowing that somebody is probably different from you. You feel threatened. You feel like your tribe could be threatened because they're so different. And that is just normal for any nation, any tribe, that it's almost instinctive. If you watch Vikings, one of my favorite shows, now that I'm getting back to my faith, I just realized that there was a lot of sex scenes. So I don't want to say that I want to encourage you to watch it, but it was a really great way for me, or at least it was fascinating to me to see how Vikings used to live, or at least how they believed into the gods and the everything that was ritual too. Very weird. Now that I'm doing this series, I'm even more obsessed and fascinated by it because I could find parallels between the European point way before Christianity and then Africa point before Christianity as well. A lot of things that would be very much alike. But we're not there yet. We're getting there. So let's just go on with the rest of the thing. Now with the pagan response, due to the famine, due to extreme climate, it would appease the god through human and animal sacrifices. And for them, it was normal because it was all about restoring the balance. So you think about a lot of gods that we probably know now, if you are a fan of Marvel as well. The big one is Thor. This other that we know less, Perun, Ceres, and you think about the pagan Europe, so the Slavic, the Germanic, the Celt, all those nations, or at least all those tribes getting all over Europe, they were doing that. It was pretty much similar. So to appease the gods, they would do that because they believed that the gods were not happy. They were displeased with them. And that's why they were getting punished with the food, with the climate. And there was a lot of blame and scapegoating back then as well. The famine and the extreme climate would lead to accusations of sorcery, divine punishment due to sin. So there was a lot of blame. Nobody would take any responsibility about it. Think about the social safety net. It was limited as well, because even if the chief, the tribal leaders would redistribute the food, still not organized institutions like the Christian monasteries that arrived way after, especially during the Dark Ages. Now, with the corruption in the power structure back then, they had a hierarchy, and it was very warrior-based. So all the leaders, you think about the chieftains, you think about the troops, you think about the high priests, they would hold both the political and spiritual power, which led to a lot of abuse because a lot of things could go unchecked because the authority was often tied to claims of ancestry or divine favor. So nobody would actually double validate or make sure that they actually were into the right path, let's say. If you're a chef, if you're a leader, you can pretty much do a lot of things and kind of put it onto the gods, putting onto the ancestors, I would say. The concept of the sin, the way we understand it as Christian, was very different back then because the corruption was not always seen as a sin the way that we see it. A lot of manipulation would go unchecked, and as long as somebody is a winner in that, a lot of people wouldn't necessarily question it the same way that we do today, right? Because of the morality, because of the Christian faith, because of Christianity in general. The actions were judged by loyalty, honor, strength, more than mercy and humility. The bribery or conquest were sometimes seen as signs of power or cleverness, not ethical failure. Because the point was to be dominant. Domination was a prize. Because when people are dominant or nations being dominant, they would be more protected. They would be less threatened. And this is how people would respect you. So that just leads to a lot of manipulation to get to it because of the morality not necessarily being the same way as it is now being Christian. The pagan morality was based on the clan loyalty and warrior code. Vengeance, retaliation were normalized. Think about the Celtic and the Norse having the blood feuds all the time. Europeans were polytheistic and animist because they would worship many gods tied to the nature, the harvest, the fertility, the warrior, and the underworld. And elements from the nature were sacred as well. So you think about the sacred groves, the rivers, the stones, and sometimes animals too were venerated. So it goes back to the pagan part of just nations in general, not just in Europe. We center and focus on Europe here, but you're gonna see more of those elements in Africa, in Europe, in Asia, even if it's different. You're gonna see the same parallel, the same mind about it, or ideas and spirituality about it. So it's something that is pretty close that we do now when we think about the New Age in a way. Think about the crystals and all those stuff. I'm just saying, the divination and ancestor worship were pretty common as well. little parallel here with Africa because we still see that a lot. You think about Wakanda, for example, when his dad died and he got to talk to him in his dreams and in his visions, and all the respect towards those elders. You see a lot of those traces even in Africa, all those parallels happening as well. For the social cohesion, we can see here that the religion was first communal, tribal, and it was not about the personal salvation that Christianity came to bring about after. Most people lived as subsistence farmers, so with no long-term food storage because of that limitation. When crops failed, there was not a centralized help. So the weak, the elderly would be left. They couldn't bring more support to the rest of the tribe. Now with the architecture, again, it was not what we see today. When we see Europe, when you think about Europe and you're fascinated by it because it came with Christianity again here. Before there was no grand temples like Rome until much later. So the sacred groves, the stone circles like Stonehenge, for example, wooden altars, they were defined as worship spaces. They were the natural spaces for that. The villages were often made of wood, clay, thatch, not stable at all, very easily destroyed. So it was such a critical way of living, but it was everything that he had. The forts and long houses were the center of power, not temple. Everything was very, very, very basic to survive. To sum it up, everything that I've been saying, it was ritual-based, nature-focused. There was a social cohesion, but not salvation at all. After Christianity arrived, there were a university moral code beyond the tribe or the clan. So it was not about the tribe anymore. It was about the universal way of seeing it, no matter where you would live, no matter your culture. A God who cared for the suffering. And that is the most beautiful part about God, the true God, Jesus, is there to help those that are suffering. He gave everything. He sacrificed himself, right, to get to be forgiven. Institutions like churches, monasteries provide charity and refuge during famine. It was a concept of sin and personal responsibility that would challenge abuses of power. Because you know it's not about the clan anymore. It's not about the tribe anymore. It's about you as well. You being part of the clan, not the clan and you being in it. So there was a responsibility, or at least a personal responsibility, that was a little bit more ingrained into the Christianity and the Christian God. Missionary impulse to confront paganism and evangelize. So it was not about keeping it local. It was about spreading it out, evangelizing. And that's one of the comments of Jesus, is that go and share the good news to the rest of the world. And that is so beautiful because we get to share the same God, we get to share the same beauty, we get to share the same mercy along with his mother. It's the first part. And the first part to understand that not everything was that beautiful, the way that we would think about it. Europe suffered. They had a lot of suffering happening to them. They would see gods the same way that African would see gods, with different names. We're going to get deeper into that with the next couple of episodes, so get ready for it. But at least for you to have that thought about the Christianity being a white man-made religion, because they didn't come up with that. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you liked it. Episode 1. And the point here is to keep the history, a lot less of my opinion, a lot less of what I would think about it, a lot less about what I would think about Nick Fuentes saying those things, right? I'm just going to bring the facts and I'm just going to bring a lot of love. So if you want to be a part of just getting to discover more, whether it's what we are living through today in the Western part, whether you're African and you want to go back to your own roots, the Christian roots, to be honest, and you want to be able to be confident, you want to be able to find your purpose, God-centered, not about your age, not about yourself, but about you loving God and discovering what God wants for you here. Expose yourself, finding your voice, being on YouTube, being on social media, and having that business that is still God-centered. If you want to be able to have that freedom, to be at home, to take care of your kid, to have that confidence, to be able to have the family being the center of everything and having God being the center of that, you're going to have access to the Rosary Challenge, where you can find yourself loving, praying the Rosary, getting closer to Mary, because for me, she's been that person that opened up more of the love that I have for Christ now, the love that I have for the Catholic Church. Everything is gonna be down below. I'm gonna see you for my next video. And until then, like I say all the time, keep smiling because it's free and contagious in a good way. Bye.